My coworkers applauded when ICE dragged Carlos out in handcuffs, even though he knew all their names, returned their lost AirPods, and ate alone in a supply closet. When I asked Bruce why he did it, he smirked and said, "Night staff are like paper towels. Disposable." I stayed silent. The day ICE dragged Carlos out of our office, my coworkers applauded. 3 days later, he handed me evidence that could destroy them all. It started when Carlos joined our startup as an overnight janitor. The timing was brutal. "Make America Safe Again" stickers appeared on desks. Break room talk shifted to certain types ruining the country. The thefts began immediately. "Lock everything up," Tabby warned me. "MacBooks keep disappearing during his shifts." Security started searching Carlos nightly, making him empty his pockets while he stood there, head down. I'll admit it, when I saw him leaving an empty conference room at 2 a.m., even I wondered. But then I noticed things. Carlos knew every employee's name, though most pretended he didn't exist. He'd saved dropped AirPods for weeks until owners remembered losing them. Once, I saw him studying Python tutorials during his break, notebook balanced on his knee in the supply closet where he ate alone. The harassment escalated fast. People started clutching their bags when he cleaned. Brad accidentally spilled coffee, laughing that's what he's paid for. Someone taped "thief" to his cart. HR scheduled random searches that only happened to Carlos. Certain types can't be trusted. I overheard Bruce, our CFO, tell security, "Keep special watch on the night staff." Everything changed when I stayed late one night, finishing a critical presentation. My laptop crashed at 11 p.m., months of work gone. I was panicking when Bruce appeared. "Rough night?" He sat on my desk, too close, hand on my shoulder. "I could recover those files, but you'd owe me." He slid a hotel key across the desk, fingers brushing mine. "This weekend's conference. I need company." His hand moved to my back. "Excuse me, sir." Carlos stood in the doorway. "Security needs you downstairs. Your car alarm." Bruce just smiled. "We'll continue this," he said, squeezing my shoulder before leaving. The second he left, Carlos rushed over. Without a word, his fingers flew across my keyboard. Within minutes, my files returned. All of them. "Thank you," I whispered. He just nodded and returned to mopping. The next morning, CEO called in all hands. Bruce announced new security cameras because certain employees make others uncomfortable. He pointed out thefts only happened at night shifts. Several people glanced at Carlos, nodding. I tried mentioning Carlos helping me. Bruce cut me off. "Let's discuss your new project in my office, privately." 2 weeks later, I watched 6 ICE agents storm our lobby in tactical gear. Someone had called them. They cuffed Carlos while everyone pulled out their phones to film. "Finally," someone muttered. "About time," said another. Carlos kept his dignity until they shoved him toward the door, then his hands shook. Bruce sent a company-wide email that afternoon, proud to announce we've solved our security issues. People literally applauded when he walked by. That night, my laptop vanished again. I found it in Bruce's office, logged into his personal business sites. He'd been selling our equipment online. Photos showed boxes of our tech in his car. I found Carlos 3 days later, stocking shelves at a grocery store at 3 a.m. Bruises circled his wrists. His eyes were red, hands trembling. "They let me go," he said quietly. "I'm a citizen, born in El Paso. But papers don't matter when someone decides you don't belong." His voice cracked. 20 years, no record. My daughter won't let me pick her up from school anymore. Her friend's parents saw the videos. He fumbled in his pocket, dropping a USB twice before handing it over. I documented everything. Bruce has done this to 4 janitors. I'm the only one who is a citizen. The others just disappeared. He showed me security footage on his phone. Bruce loading boxes into his car. Timestamps proving Carlos wasn't even in the building during the thefts. He targets night staff because no one listens to us. Nobody cares. Tears ran down his face. I did everything right. Everything. Worked 2 jobs, put my kids through college, never even had a parking ticket. He pressed the USB into my palm. That has everything. Footage, emails, proof of what he's been doing. I need someone still inside to send it to everyone. His hands shook so badly he could barely hold his phone. My daughter used to be proud of me. Said I was the hardest working man she knew. Now she's ashamed. But maybe if people knew the truth, "Will you help me?" he asked. The USB felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. We both knew what helping him could cost me. Bruce had already cornered me once. He'd destroyed 4 lives without blinking. But I thought about the applause when ICE dragged him out. The satisfied looks. How quickly everyone believed the worst because it fit what they wanted to believe. "Yes," I said. "I'll help." The USB drive burned in my pocket as I drove home. My hands wouldn't stop shaking on the steering wheel. Carlos's broken expression kept flashing through my mind, the way his voice cracked when he mentioned his daughter. 20 years of perfect citizenship meant nothing when Bruce decided he was the perfect target. At my apartment, I locked the door and pulled every curtain closed. My laptop sat on the kitchen table, its blue light casting shadows across the room. I plugged in the USB with trembling fingers. Files appeared immediately. Security footage, emails, spreadsheets. The evidence was overwhelming. The first video showed Bruce loading boxes into his BMW at 2 a.m. The timestamp matched a night when Carlos had called in sick to care for his son. Another clip captured Bruce using the freight elevator, wheeling out what looked like thousands of dollars in equipment. Each video had corresponding inventory reports showing items marked as missing during night shift. My phone buzzed. A text from Bruce. "Hey, noticed you left early today. Everything okay? BTW, have you seen your laptop? Thought I saw it in the conference room earlier." My blood ran cold. I checked my bag. My work laptop was gone. I'd had it when I left the office, I was certain. The conference room he mentioned was nowhere near my usual route. He was letting me know he'd taken it. Another text. "Actually, I think someone turned it into security. Might want to check with them tomorrow. Wouldn't want any sensitive files getting into the wrong hands." The threat was clear. I started copying the USB contents to multiple encrypted drives, uploading backups to secure cloud storage. My personal laptop's fan whirred as it processed gigabytes of evidence. Each file revealed more of Bruce's pattern. 4 janitors over 2 years. 3 had been undocumented and simply vanished after the raids. Carlos was the only citizen, the only one who could fight back. More texts from Bruce flooded in. "Really should be more careful with company property." Then, "These things have a way of affecting performance reviews. Finally, let's discuss this tomorrow. My office. 8 a.m. sharp." I worked through the night, organizing evidence, creating multiple backups. By dawn, I had copies hidden everywhere. Cloud storage, external drives, even emailed to a dormant account I'd created years ago. The evidence painted a clear picture. Bruce had stolen over $200,000 in equipment, systematically targeting night janitors who he knew couldn't fight back. The coffee shop near my apartment opened at 6 a.m. I needed caffeine and a public place to think. As I waited for my order, Bruce walked in. Not a coincidence. He approached with his trademark smile, the one that made donors write checks and board members nod along. wrong? Rough night? You look tired. I gripped my coffee cup to stop my hands from shaking. I found my laptop in a strange place. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. His eyes narrowed for just a second before the smile returned. Oh, where was that? Doesn't matter. I have it now. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You know, these misunderstandings can affect careers. We should discuss this properly. Maybe grab coffee later? The words were friendly, but his tone carried an edge sharp enough to cut. We're having coffee now. I meant privately, away from distractions. His hand gestured vaguely at the other customers. Sometimes people get confused about what they think they saw. Makes them do foolish things. The barista called out another order, breaking the tension momentarily. Bruce's smile never wavered, but I saw his fist clench at his side. I should go, I said, moving toward the door. Think about what I said, he called after me. I'd hate to see a promising career derailed by confusion. In the parking lot, Tabby from accounting appeared beside my car. She glanced around nervously before leaning close. I saw Bruce in your office last night, she whispered. After you left, he was at your desk for a while. Did you tell anyone? She shook her head quickly. I didn't see anything, understand? Nothing at all. I can't afford to get involved. She hurried away before I could respond. My mind raced through options. HR reported directly to Bruce. The CEO thought Bruce walked on water. Going through official channels would be like handing him the evidence to destroy. I needed another approach. Back at my apartment, I started documenting everything. Screenshots of Bruce's texts, photos of my ransacked desk drawers, a timeline of events, every interaction, every threat, every piece of evidence Carlos had risked everything to gather. When I returned to the office that afternoon, my personal items had been rearranged. Nothing missing, just moved. My coffee mug on the wrong side of the desk, picture frames turned at different angles, drawers left slightly open. A clear message. Bruce had been there, wanted me to know it. I made a decision. Through a friend's recommendation, I found a private investigator who specialized in corporate cases. We met at a diner across town where Bruce wouldn't have eyes. The PI, a former detective named Marcus, reviewed my initial evidence. This is solid, he said, but you need more. Documentation of his current activities, not just past crimes. Can you handle that? I nodded, though my stomach churned. What do you need me to do? Keep your distance but stay alert. Document any suspicious activity. I'll handle the external surveillance. He slid a business card across the table. Call immediately if you feel unsafe. That evening, I drove past Bruce's house, trying to spot patterns in his routine. The street was quiet, lined with McMansions that screamed new money. His BMW sat in the driveway next to his wife's Range Rover. Motion sensor lights activated as I passed. Bruce emerged from his front door, staring directly at my car. My heart hammered as I maintained steady speed. Not too fast, not too slow. In the rearview mirror, I saw him walking toward the street, phone in hand. Within an hour, my phone exploded with messages. Brad texted first. Heard you're stirring up trouble. Not a good look. Then 2 other employees I barely knew. Bruce has been nothing but supportive to this company. Maybe focus on your own work? And some of us actually appreciate having jobs. Don't rock the boat. The coordinated response was chilling. Bruce had mobilized his network instantly. My phone rang. Frank, my mentor, the man who'd recruited me to the company. We need to talk, he said without preamble. Bruce asked me to reach out. He's concerned about some wild conspiracy theories you're spreading. I haven't spread anything. He says you're making accusations about thefts, harassing him at his home. This isn't like you. Frank, what if I told you I had evidence? Stop. His voice was firm. I've known Bruce for 10 years. He built this company's financial infrastructure. Whatever you think you know, you're wrong. Let this go before you destroy your career. Ha, Bruce really thinks he's in some spy movie with all this. I saw your laptop in the conference room business when everyone knows he totally just swiped it himself. And then showing up at the coffee shop at 6 a.m. like some villain who practiced his scary speech in the mirror. The best part is him trying to sound all smooth and threatening while the barista's just yelling out, "Triple shot soy latte for Karen," in the background. Nothing ruins a good threat like someone's coffee order breaking up the drama. The call ended, leaving me more isolated than ever. But Carlos's words echoed in my mind. Nobody listens to us. Nobody cares. He'd lost everything standing up to Bruce. The least I could do was see this through. I spent the night analyzing the security footage from Carlos's USB. Using the timestamps, I created a detailed timeline. Every theft aligned perfectly with Bruce's overtime hours. He'd been careful, but not careful enough. The pattern was undeniable. The next day brought new pressure. Driving home from work, I noticed the same sedan in my mirrors for miles. When I changed lanes, it changed lanes. When I turned, it turned. I managed to get the license plate before taking several random turns to lose them. That evening, Tristan came over. We'd been dating for 6 months, and he worked in finance at another firm. I'd hoped for support, but his reaction crushed me. You need to drop this crusade, he said after I explained everything. Bruce golfs with my CEO. They're in the same country club. This could affect my career too. Carlos lost his job, his dignity, everything, and he was innocent. That's unfortunate, but it's not your problem. Why risk everything for some janitor? The casual dismissal of Carlos's humanity made my decision easier. I think you should leave. After Tristan left, I found my old Slack messages being forwarded around the company. Months ago, I'd vented to a coworker about things going missing from my desk. Bruce had somehow accessed these private messages and sent them company-wide with his own commentary. As you can see, our colleague has a history of paranoid accusations. I'm concerned about her mental state. The next morning, Bruce scheduled a mandatory all-hands meeting about workplace harmony. He stood at the front of the conference room, playing the concerned leader perfectly. It's come to my attention that some team members are spreading unfounded rumors, he said, eyes finding mine in the crowd. This kind of behavior creates a toxic environment. We're a family here, and families support each other. Anyone undermining that unity will face consequences. The threat was crystal clear. Several people glanced at me. Some looked sympathetic but scared. Others seemed angry, like I was the problem. After the meeting, my project lead pulled me aside. I'm removing you from the Patterson presentation, she said, not meeting my eyes. There are concerns about your recent behavior. It's best if you take a lower profile for a while. The Patterson presentation was my biggest project, months of work that would have guaranteed my promotion. Bruce was systematically destroying my career. During lunch, I sat alone in the cafeteria. Ray, the building security guard who'd worked there for 15 years, sat down across from me. You should leave it alone, he said quietly. Bruce is connected. His wife's family has money. Board members owe him favors. You can't win this, so we just let him destroy innocent people? Ray sighed. I've seen what happens to people who cross him. It never ends well. That janitor isn't the first, won't be the last. But Ray's warning had the opposite effect. If Bruce had done this before, there had to be more evidence. I found Eddie, one of the main maintenance workers who'd been friendly with Carlos. He was emptying trash bins in the break room, shoulders tense. Eddie, I need to ask you something about Carlos. He glanced around nervously. I don't know anything. He mentioned keeping a notebook, documentation. Do you know where he might have left it? Eddie continued working, not responding. I waited. Finally, he muttered, his old locker, basement level. Maintenance keeps them for 30 days before clearing them out. During my break, I convinced Eddie to check the locker. He returned with a worn notebook, its margins filled with Carlos's neat handwriting. My hands trembled as I flipped through it. There it was, 6 months ago. Carlos had written about seeing Bruce loading equipment into his car. He'd documented dates, times, even partial serial numbers. He tried to tell someone, Eddie whispered. No one listened, said he was making trouble. 3 junior developers approached me separately that afternoon. Each had noticed inventory discrepancies, but had been too afraid to speak up. One showed me spreadsheets he'd kept privately. Another mentioned seeing Bruce in the server room during off hours. The third had overheard Bruce on phone calls with someone about merchandise. Cross-referencing Carlos's notes with the company's purchase orders revealed the scope of Bruce's operation. Over $200,000 in equipment had vanished over 2 years. High-end laptops, servers, networking equipment, all written off as lost or damaged during night shifts. That evening, Samantha from IT knocked on my apartment door. I'd never seen her outside of work. She looked terrified. I need to tell someone, she said. Bruce had me delete security footage multiple times, said it was for server space, but it was always specific dates and times. Do you have any proof? She pulled out a USB drive. I kept logs, every deletion request. I knew it was wrong, but I needed my job. The evidence was mounting faster than I could process it. I created an anonymous email account and sent the timeline to 3 board members I thought might listen. Within hours, one responded asking for more information. Bruce's response was immediate. The next morning, he announced a new email monitoring policy to prevent corporate espionage. Samantha warned me through Signal that IT had been ordered to track all communications. At lunch, Eddie pulled me aside. Bruce offered me $500 to report on your movements. Wanted to know where you go, who you talk to. The web was tightening around me. Bruce assigned me to work directly with Brad on a project, creating legitimate reasons to monitor my activities. Every meeting felt like surveillance. Every conversation carried the weight of potential betrayal. But something else was building too. People were starting to see the pattern. I recognized the pattern from what happened to Victoria last year. She'd been our lead developer until Bruce started paying her special attention. The compliments, the private meetings, the sudden interest in her career advancement. When she rejected his advances, her code reviews became brutal. Projects reassigned. Performance reviews tanked. She quit within 3 months, and Bruce spun it as her being unable to handle pressure. The next morning brought an unexpected message. A woman named Maria reached out through LinkedIn. Her brother had been the second janitor Bruce targeted. She'd found my anonymous posts on a workplace forum and connected the dots. Her brother had been deported 18 months ago, but not before telling her about an executive who'd been stealing equipment and blaming the night staff. She had dates, details that matched Carlos's timeline perfectly. Tristan showed up at my apartment that evening, looking uncomfortable. He'd been at the country club when Bruce made a joke about finally getting the cleaning staff sorted out. The other executives had laughed, but something in Bruce's tone made Tristan realize I'd been telling the truth. He apologized and offered to help, though we both knew our relationship was beyond repair. During a strategy meeting the next day, Bruce left his planner open on the conference table while getting coffee. I quickly photographed pages showing meetings with someone marked only as buyer, dates that corresponded with major equipment disappearances. My hands shook as I slipped my phone back into my pocket just as he returned. I filed a police report that afternoon. The detective took notes but explained that white-collar investigations took months, sometimes years. She suggested I pursue internal channels while they built their case. The system moved slowly, but at least it was moving. Carlos's daughter Sophia contacted me through Facebook. She was studying computer science at the local university and wanted to help clear her father's name. We met at a campus coffee shop where she showed me her analysis. She'd tracked patterns in the company's HR records that her father had mentioned. Bruce always chose victims who struggled with English or lacked documentation, people who couldn't fight back. Patricia, Bruce's former assistant, agreed to meet after I promised anonymity. She revealed that Bruce had made her alter inventory reports every quarter, claiming it was to correct accounting errors. She'd kept copies of the originals, knowing something wasn't right. When she'd questioned him, he'd threatened her job. She'd found another position and left quietly, but the guilt had eaten at her. Bruce cornered me in the elevator the following week, just the 2 of us, no cameras. He stood too close, blocking the buttons. His cologne was overwhelming. He asked about my investigations, his tone casual but eyes hard. I kept my voice steady, stating I was simply doing my job and documenting everything per company policy. The elevator doors opened on my floor, and I stepped out without looking back, though my legs shook the entire walk to my desk. Carlos's family was struggling. His wife called me crying. They had 1 week before losing health insurance for their disabled son. The medical bills were crushing them. Carlos had found work at the grocery store, but it barely covered rent. The injustice burned in my chest. Bruce drove a car worth more than Carlos would make in 2 years, built on the backs of people he'd destroyed. Samantha made a discovery that changed everything. While doing routine system maintenance, she found Bruce had been accessing personnel files of all night shift workers, specifically filtering for citizenship status. He'd been screening for victims, choosing the most vulnerable. The evidence was digital, traceable, undeniable. During our weekly team meeting, I mentioned finding interesting patterns in some old security footage timestamps. Bruce's hand shook as he poured his coffee, spilling some on the conference table. He laughed it off, but I saw the fear flash across his face. He knew I had something. That afternoon, Bruce called me into his office. He closed the door and offered me a promotion. Senior project manager, $50,000 raise, corner office. All I had to do was focus on my future instead of the past. I told him I'd think about it, buying time while my stomach churned. He smiled, but his eyes remained cold. 2 board members started asking questions. They'd received my anonymous emails and noticed discrepancies between equipment purchases and inventory audits. Bruce scrambled to provide explanations, but the numbers didn't add up. The foundation of his scheme was cracking. Eddie started positioning himself strategically during Bruce's overtime hours. He documented Bruce accessing the warehouse after hours, loading equipment into his car. Eddie used his phone to record from a distance, building a pattern of behavior that corroborated the security footage. The company divided into camps. Bruce's inner circle, 5 people who'd benefited from his leadership, defended him fiercely, but cracks showed. Others who'd stayed silent began sharing sharing stories. The administrative assistant who'd seen him in the server room at midnight. The accountant who'd questioned missing invoices. The security guard who'd been told to take specific nights off. I found the smoking GN on a resale website. Listings for high-end laptops and servers with serial numbers that matched our inventory. The seller's username led back to an email address Bruce had used for personal business. He'd been sloppy, confident in his untouchability. Tristan started recording Bruce's country club conversations. Patricia keeping copies of those reports? That's some serious, I knew this day would come energy right there. But the best part has to be Bruce using his personal email for selling stolen stuff. Nothing says criminal mastermind like leaving a digital trail with your name on it. Buddy, do better. The casual racism, the jokes about keeping the company clean, the bragging about profit margins that came from reduced overhead. He sent me the audio files, and I added them to the growing mountain of evidence. We grew closer through the investigation, not romantically, but as allies. We shared our own experiences with workplace harassment, building trust through vulnerability. He'd been pressured to fire a whistleblower at his previous job. I told him about Bruce's hotel key. We understood each other's guilt and determination. The temptation to plant evidence gnawed at me. It would be easy to exaggerate to ensure Bruce couldn't wiggle free, but I remembered Carlos's dignity, even in handcuffs. We would win with the truth or not at all. During a heated board meeting, Bruce lost his composure. A board member questioned the pattern of thefts coinciding with his overtime. Bruce snapped about needing to clean house of undesirables who didn't appreciate opportunities. The room went silent. His mask had slipped in front of witnesses. 3 employees came forward independently, corroborating seeing Bruce with equipment during their logged sick days. The pattern was too consistent to ignore. Each story added another brick to the wall of evidence. Bruce's lunch crew started avoiding him. His usual table sat empty as board members asked increasingly pointed questions. The executives who'd laughed at his jokes now found urgent meetings during lunch hours. Power was shifting. Momentum built as more people felt safe speaking up. 12 employees privately shared suspicious experiences. The janitor who'd been fired after reporting missing equipment. The IT contractor who'd been blacklisted after questioning inventory. The accountant who'd been transferred after flagging discrepancies. Sophia worked her technical magic on Bruce's deleted emails. She recovered correspondence with buyers, negotiating prices for equipment that was supposedly lost or damaged. The digital trail led to overseas buyers, explaining why the equipment had been hard to trace. Bruce grew desperate. After another board meeting, he cornered me in the parking garage. His professional veneer cracked completely. He snarled about my interference, how I thought anyone would believe me over him. He'd made the company profitable. He'd earned certain privileges. I recorded every word on my phone. Department heads who dismissed my concerns began apologizing quietly. They offered support behind closed doors, afraid to be public but unable to ignore the evidence. The head of engineering admitted he'd suspected something but hadn't wanted to rock the boat. Bruce's options narrowed as the board scheduled an emergency audit of all equipment purchases going back 3 years. He tried to delay, claiming it would disrupt operations, but the board insisted. The walls were closing in. Patricia revealed the final piece of the pattern. At Bruce's previous company, a janitor had been deported after being accused of theft. The same playbook, the same victims, the same result. Bruce had refined his technique over years, moving from company to company. I helped Carlos's family set up a GoFundMe, carefully wording it to protect their privacy, while explaining the injustice. The tech community responded with outrage and donations. Within days, they'd raised enough for 6 months of health insurance. 15 employees formed an unofficial support network, sharing information through encrypted channels. We documented everything, created backups of backups, prepared for whatever Bruce might try next. The solidarity gave us strength. Bruce's attempt to blame the new intern backfired spectacularly. She had receipts for everywhere she'd been during the supposed thefts, including security footage from her second job. His desperation was showing, grasping at anyone vulnerable. Ray finally saw the truth. He watched Bruce try to access the server room after hours, attempting to delete backup files. Ray, who'd protected Bruce for years, called me immediately. His voice shook as he apologized for not believing me sooner. Tech blogs picked up anonymous tips about our startup's culture problem. The pressure on leadership mounted as potential investors asked uncomfortable questions. The board couldn't ignore the growing scandal. The forensic audit revealed suspicious vendor payments matching the timing of missing equipment, shell companies, fake invoices, a complex web of financial manipulation. Bruce had been clever, but not clever enough for professional auditors. With the audit results due in 48 hours, I faced a choice. Submit the evidence through official channels and trust the system, or leak everything to the press and ensure public accountability. I spent a sleepless night weighing options. Bruce's carefully constructed life began unraveling publicly. His wife confronted him at the office about a second mortgage he'd taken out secretly. Their argument echoed through the halls as she demanded answers about their finances. His control slipped further. The timeline became critical when Carlos's son needed surgery the following month. Insurance coverage would determine whether they could afford the procedure. Every day mattered now. I handled Bruce's escalating threats with documented calm. Every interaction went through email, she said to lawyers. I refused to meet privately, insisted on witnesses, created a paper trail he couldn't dispute. He grew more erratic with each failed intimidation attempt. Even Bruce's golf buddies began distancing themselves. Whispers at the country club, canceled lunch meetings, unreturned calls. Success had many fathers, but scandal was an orphan. His network crumbled as the evidence mounted. Truth prevailed through collective courage. 22 employees submitted documented experiences to the board investigation. Security guards, janitors, accountants, developers, a chorus of voices that couldn't be silenced or dismissed. The board announced Bruce would take a leave of absence pending investigation results. I knew it wasn't enough. Leave meant he could return, could find new victims at another company. Carlos deserved real justice, not corporate damage control. Bruce made one last desperate play. He filed a complaint with HR claiming I was creating a hostile work environment, that my investigation was harassment. HR reviewed his complaint and found it lacked merit, especially given the evidence of his own behavior. His lawyers sent cease and desist letters to everyone involved in the investigation. The attempted legal intimidation backfired when our lawyer responded with the evidence of Bruce's harassment and threats. The paper trail I'd carefully built protected us all. The board froze Bruce's assets pending the investigation. His house of cards was collapsing, each revelation pulling another support from the foundation. He'd built wealth on others' misery, and now the bill was coming due. Carlos's dignity began to be restored. Coworkers who'd applauded plotted his arrest now approached him at the grocery store, apologizing. Some contributed to the family's fundraiser, which exceeded $50,000. Money couldn't erase the trauma, but it could provide breathing room. An unexpected ally emerged from the board. A conservative member who'd immigrated legally 30 years ago stood up for Carlos. He understood what it meant to be presumed guilty because of how you looked or sounded. His support shifted the entire board's perspective. I compiled the full evidence package for the district attorney. 4 years of systematic theft, discrimination, and destroyed lives documented in meticulous detail. Security footage, financial records, witness statements, pattern analysis, an airtight case that demanded justice. Carlos's story went viral on LinkedIn after a tech journalist picked it up. Thousands shared similar experiences of workplace targeting, of being scapegoated for others' crimes. The individual injustice had exposed a systemic problem. 3 former janitors came forward after seeing the story. Each had worked at companies where Bruce had been an executive. Each had been accused of theft and fired or deported. The pattern spanned a decade and multiple victims. The forensic accountant's final report was damning. $500,000 in equipment stolen over 4 years, sold through shell companies to overseas buyers. The money trail led directly to Bruce's personal accounts. Timestamp analysis proved definitively that Bruce was the only person with access during the theft windows. Key card logs, security footage, and email records created an undeniable timeline. Technology he'd used to frame others now condemned him. The company voted no confidence in Bruce. Termination was imminent, but he refused to resign. His ego wouldn't allow him to admit defeat, even as the evidence mounted beyond any reasonable doubt. Bruce hired an aggressive law firm known for defending corporate criminals. They threatened defamation suits against all witnesses, attempting to intimidate people into silence. The threats rang hollow against our documented evidence. My promotion and raise were suddenly frozen pending the investigation's conclusion. The retaliation was clear but careful, designed to pressure me without creating more evidence. My savings dwindled as legal bills mounted. Several witnesses considered backing down under the legal threats. The support network wavered as people worried about their careers, their families, their futures. Bruce's lawyers were good at their job, creating fear even without merit. I faced the financial strain largely alone as others protected themselves. The investigators' bills, lawyer consultations, lost wages from the frozen promotion. Fighting for justice came with a price I hadn't fully anticipated. Bruce made a final offer through his lawyers. A severance package with full salary for 2 years, glowing recommendations, and a small settlement for misunderstandings. All I had to do was sign an NDA and walk away. The money would solve my immediate problems, buy silence for his future victims. I chose justice. The next morning, I filed a whistleblower complaint with the EEOC, triggering federal protections against retaliation. Bruce had made a mistake targeting someone who understood the system. All parties converged for an emergency board meeting. Bruce and his lawyers, the witnesses, investigators, and board members packed the conference room. The tension was suffocating as evidence was presented systematically. Bruce's lies unraveled in real time. Technical evidence contradicted each claim. His lawyers' objections grew increasingly desperate as timestamps, financial records, and witness testimony painted an undeniable picture. The room watched him deflate. The overseas buyers were the key to everything. Bruce had been careful selling domestically, but international sales left traces. Banking records, shipping manifests, communication logs, a digital trail that led directly back to him. His own lawyer began to distance himself as evidence of witness tampering surfaced. Bruce had contacted former employees, offering money for silence or changed testimony. The attempted cover-up became part of the crime. I faced a final choice: push for maximum criminal charges that could mean years in prison, or accept his resignation with restitution to victims. The safe path would end this quickly, but Carlos deserved more than corporate compromise. I chose full prosecution. Carlos had lost his dignity, his reputation, his daughter's pride. Money couldn't restore those things. Only real accountability could begin to balance the scales. The board agreed, referring the case for criminal prosecution. The board meeting erupted into chaos. Bruce's lawyer attempted damage control, but the evidence overwhelmed every defense. The guy's trying to scare people with legal letters while our OP has literally years of evidence sitting there like, nice try, buddy. And then Bruce offers 2 years' salary to make it all go away? That's like offering someone a band-aid after you set their house on fire. I watched Bruce's face cycle through denial, rage, and finally a cold calculation as he realized the game was over. Security footage played on the conference room screen. Bruce loading boxes at 2:47 a.m. Transaction records from overseas buyers. Deleted emails Sophia had recovered showing price negotiations. The forensic accountant walked the board through each theft, each frame-up, each destroyed life. Bruce lunged across the table when Carlos's photo appeared on screen. Security restrained him while he screamed about ungrateful employees ruining everything he'd built. The mask had completely shattered. Board members recoiled from the man they'd trusted with millions. The vote was unanimous. Immediate termination for cause. No severance. Full cooperation with law enforcement. Bruce's lawyer packed his briefcase without a word, abandoning his client as the walls closed in. I followed Bruce to the parking garage, maintaining distance while documenting his movements. He was loading more equipment into his BMW when police arrived. The arrest happened quickly, handcuffs clicking as he tried to explain he was just retrieving personal items. At the station, Bruce's attempts to manipulate continued. He claimed mental breakdown, stress-induced poor judgment. The detective showed him the evidence of systematic theft spanning years and multiple companies. His temporary insanity defense crumbled against the methodical planning documented in his own files. Bruce's wife arrived with their accountant. She'd discovered he'd emptied their children's college funds, taken out loans against their house. The stolen equipment money had funded his gambling debts and a mistress's apartment. Even his family became victims of his greed. The conservative board member who'd supported Carlos called a press conference. He listed Bruce's crimes precisely, emphasizing how Bruce had weaponized immigration fears to cover his theft. The tech community's response was immediate. Companies began reviewing their own security practices and bias incidents. My financial situation grew desperate. Legal bills mounted while my promotion remained frozen. I sold my car, moved to a smaller apartment. The investigator reduced his fees, but justice wasn't free. Every dollar spent felt like investment in preventing future victims. Other witnesses faced similar struggles. Samantha received mysterious job rejections after stellar interviews. Eddie's hours were cut without explanation. The retaliation was subtle but real. real. We supported each other through encrypted channels, sharing resources and encouragement. Bruce's plea negotiations began. His lawyer pushed for minimal charges, community service. The prosecutor held firm. Grand theft, fraud, witness tampering, civil rights violations. The evidence was overwhelming. Bruce faced potential decades in prison. I testified before the grand jury. Hours of questions about every detail, every document, every witnessed interaction. The prosecutor walked me through the timeline methodically. Bruce's pattern of targeting vulnerable employees became undeniable under oath. Carlos testified next. His dignity filled the room as he described the humiliation of being searched nightly, the terror of the ICE raid, the devastation of his daughter's shame. Jurors wiped away tears. His quiet strength demolished Bruce's victim-blaming defense. The indictment included 47 counts, each theft, each false accusation, each civil rights violation carefully documented. Bruce's bail was set at $2 million. His wife refused to post it, filing for divorce and asset protection the same day. More victims emerged. A janitor from Bruce's previous company flew in to testify. Another sent a written statement from Mexico, describing how Bruce's false accusations had destroyed his family. The pattern stretched back 15 years across 4 companies. Bruce's assets were seized pending restitution calculations. His BMW, the house, investment accounts, all frozen. The lifestyle built on others' misery evaporated overnight. He sat in county jail in the same orange jumpsuit as the people he'd wrongly accused. The company implemented immediate reforms: independent HR reporting, anonymous tip lines, mandatory bias training with real consequences. The board hired an external firm to audit all terminations from the past 5 years. They found 3 more suspicious cases. Carlos's son had his surgery. The fundraiser covered all medical expenses with money left for therapy and education. I visited them at the hospital. His daughter was there holding her father's hand. The pride had returned to her eyes. Bruce's trial date was set for 6 months out. His lawyer filed motion after motion for delays, dismissals, venue changes. Each was denied. The evidence was too strong, the pattern too clear. Justice moved slowly but inevitably forward. I found new employment at a smaller firm. The CEO had followed the case and specifically wanted someone who'd stand up to corruption. My salary was lower, but my conscience was clear. Several other witnesses found similar opportunities as word spread. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Bruce took the stand against his lawyer's advice, his arrogance intact. He claimed he was protecting the company from real thieves. The prosecutor destroyed him with his own emails, his own security footage, his own financial records. Witness after witness testified. Employees who'd seen him stealing, victims he'd framed, accountants who'd traced the money. The jury saw through every lie, every manipulation. Bruce's confident facade cracked more each day. Carlos's testimony was the turning point. He spoke about teaching his children to work hard, follow rules, trust the system, how Bruce had shattered that trust, how his daughter now questioned everything he'd taught her about America. The courtroom was silent except for muffled sobs. The verdict came back in 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Bruce stood frozen as the judge read each one: theft, fraud, civil rights violations, witness tampering, decades of potential prison time. The bailiff led him away in shackles. Sentencing happened 2 months later. Victims gave impact statements. The janitor who'd been deported described missing his mother's funeral. Samantha explained the career damage from Bruce's retaliation. I spoke about the cost of justice: financial, emotional, professional. Carlos spoke last. He forgave Bruce, not for Bruce's sake, but for his own peace. He asked for justice, not vengeance. His grace humbled everyone present. Even the judge paused before pronouncing sentence: 18 months federal prison, 3 years supervised probation, full restitution to all victims, lifetime ban from fiduciary positions. Bruce's shoulders sagged as reality hit. His lawyer had promised minimal time. The judge had other ideas. The company settled civil suits quickly. Carlos received enough to buy a modest house and fund his children's education. Other victims got smaller amounts based on documented losses. The money helped but couldn't erase the trauma. Bruce reported to federal prison in the same facility where he'd sent innocent people. Inmates knew his story: the executive who'd framed janitors. Prison justice has its own code. He spent most of his time in protective custody. The reforms at the company took hold. Employee satisfaction scores rose. Turnover dropped. The new head of security implemented protocols that made frame-ups impossible. Bruce's legacy became a cautionary tale in orientation training. I started consulting for other companies, helping them identify and prevent similar schemes. The work paid less than my old corporate track but felt meaningful. Each policy change, each training session might prevent another Carlos. Carlos returned to the company as an IT specialist. His Python studies in the supply closet had continued at night school. He debugged code with the same meticulous attention he'd once applied to mopping floors. Colleagues who'd suspected him now sought his expertise. The first time I saw Carlos in the office after his return, he was training new employees on security protocols. He used his own story as example: how bias and greed could destroy lives. The room listened intently. Some had been there when he was arrested. His daughter Sophia graduated with honors in computer science. Carlos attended in a new suit, tears streaming as she thanked him for showing her that integrity matters more than easy answers. She'd started a nonprofit teaching coding to immigrant families. 6 months after the trial, I ran into Tristan at a conference. He apologized again for choosing his CEO's approval over truth. He'd left that firm, started his own practice focused on ethical investing. Bruce's country club had revoked his membership after the conviction. The ripple effects continued. Other companies audited their inventory systems, finding similar schemes. 2 more executives were arrested based on patterns Bruce's case had exposed. The justice system moved slowly, but ground exceedingly fine. Bruce was released after serving 14 months. Good behavior and overcrowding. He emerged older, grayer, diminished. The confident predator who'd terrorized workers was gone. Federal probation meant regular check-ins, restricted employment, constant monitoring. I encountered Bruce at a coffee shop 2 years later. He was working as a bookkeeper for a small nonprofit, the only job he could find with his record. He avoided eye contact, shoulders hunched. The man who'd wielded power like a weapon now couldn't meet my gaze. Carlos thrived in his new role. He implemented security improvements that saved the company thousands. His daughter visited the office proudly. Coworkers who'd filmed his arrest now asked about his family, invited him to lunch. Redemption came slowly but genuinely. The company became a case study in Harvard Business Review. How unchecked power and systemic bias enabled massive theft. How brave employees and careful documentation brought justice. How proper reforms could prevent recurrence. occurrence. Bruce's name became synonymous with corporate corruption. I never fully recovered financially from the legal battle. The consulting work paid bills but didn't build wealth. The executive track I'd abandoned was closed forever, but I slept well knowing I'd chosen justice over comfort. Years later, Carlos and I served on a panel about workplace discrimination. He spoke eloquently about resilience, forgiveness, and the importance of allies. I talked about the cost of speaking up and why it was worth it. The audience gave a standing ovation. Bruce completed his probation without incident. He lived quietly in a small apartment, estranged from family, abandoned by former friends. The wealth he'd stolen was gone. Restitution, legal fees, divorce settlement. He worked minimum wage, invisible to those he'd once terrorized. The last time I saw Carlos, he was debugging code while his daughter Sophia worked beside him as a junior developer. She'd joined the company after graduation, proud to work where her father had triumphed over injustice. They spoke in technical terms I barely understood, equals in their expertise. The reforms we'd fought for became industry standard. Anonymous reporting systems, independent audits, real consequences for discrimination. Each policy carried the weight of Carlos's dignity, the cost of our collective courage. Justice had prevailed, but victory came with scars. Bruce served time, Carlos regained his position, and systems changed. Yet the months of fear, the financial strain, the career damage remained. Real justice isn't clean or simple. It's messy, expensive, partial, and still worth pursuing. Looking back, I'd make the same choice. That USB drive had contained more than evidence. It held Carlos's trust, his desperate hope that someone would finally listen. The applause when ICE dragged him away still echoed, but now it was drowned out by the sound of his daughter's pride, his colleagues' respect, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing we'd refused to let injustice win. Talk about the ultimate comeback story where the good guys actually win and the jerks get what they deserve. That applause from the beginning sure sounds different now that Carlos is teaching at MIT while Bruce is probably learning how to make toilet wine in prison. I love how this whole thing started with some mean people clapping and ended with Carlos getting the last laugh in the best possible way. Thanks for reading this wild ride of a story with me, folks. I hope you all have a wonderful day filled with less drama than Bruce's life.